brand new Big 12 podcast, 10 teams, 2 rings. It's part of the Softball America Podcast Network. You're going to get all your softball news from that coverage. But here today, from the whole 2024 season, you're going to get Big 12 news. So let's go ahead and get started. And I mean, what a week. There were softball headlines all across the country already. But to start it off, we got to recap and start off with Texas. I mean, they came in like a team on fire. They're pitching, they're hitting, their defense, everything was rolling. And they just looked so impressive. They took 2 against UCLA on ESPN, first couple games of the season. And I feel like that's all my Twitter feed was talking about. That's all I saw. It kept going over and over and over again. But like I said, their whole team looked impressive. And it's not often that you see teams this early in the season, week 1, look like their gears are running against high quality teams like that. I was so impressed with their freshmen, Tegan Caven in the first circle. It was her first time having an outing. And I think in an interview, one of her teammates said she looks like a vet. She comes up against UCLA in their house and completely shoves. She looked like a vet and just led that pitching staff, led the circle. And then, I mean, it's not one-sided. Texas came in, I think they had 7 home runs in the whole weekend debut. They were just on fire, and not just home runs. There was doubles. There was lots of plate production. Their 2 strikes looked great. I think that they definitely deserve to be the talk of the town. But let's just table that for a moment. And the Big Ten, their conference expanding, the SEC, their conference expanding, Pac-12, it's going to be going away. But right now, the first movement that we're going to see in college softball actually happens here in the Big 12. So the Big 12, they welcomed 3 new newcomers to the conference. So now we have UCF, U of H, and BYU added to make a total of 10 teams here in the Big 12 conference. So all in total, you have Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State, U of H, UCF, Iowa State, Texas Tech, BYU, Baylor, and Kansas. That's a mouthful. I've never had to say that many teams all in one go whenever it comes to the Big 12, but I'm excited for what this means because these new additions, they bring a different look, a different type of talent, and just fresh faces. I think it's going to make the conference better. And I mean, we already have a couple of teams that are in the top 25, but it'll push them to grow a little bit more. So a little bit about them. BYU, they looked good. They looked strong. They went 5-0 this weekend, had a win over Ole Miss and Missouri, Kansas City, which are 2 really good teams. They're going to be great RPI wins as the season goes on, as they continue to grow. But I mean, they started in Hawaii, so it's not a bad place to start season anyways, but they have a pretty good foundation set up for them. Then you have U of H. They went 4-1, and you have Taria Coleman. She is an absolute force of power at the plate. And so whenever I think of U of H and their offense, she's kind of the image that I get in my eye, right? She's the hitter that big swing, lots of power, has the potential. If she makes contact with it, it's going to be going off the bat hard. It's going to be going off the bat fast. It's going to be going off the bat far. And that's what I think about U of H as an offense in its entirety. They had the potential to have so much power, but it's yet to be seen if they have the consistency to maintain that throughout season. And then as we start to head into conference play, right now we're still in preseason. We got a little bit of time. Teams are shaking off rust, not being able to have a ton of time being on the field just because of weather. It's been kind of a crappy preseason as far as weather is gone, especially for teams that are farther in the north. So being able to shake off that rust these first few weeks is important, but you want to hit the ground running. And then UCF, I'm really excited about them as an addition to the Big 12. And let me tell you why. They brought in a transfer this year, and she transferred and she's just going to bring a lot to this team. They're going to have 2 strong arms in the circle. I expect them to really dominate. One, we all know who it is. It's Sarah Willis. She had a fantastic year whenever she actually came in and did such a great job for UCF from Washington. But Angelina DeVoe, I think that's a name that you're going to have to watch out for. It's going to be a name that you're going to start to recognize. She went 8 innings, not a single hit, not a single run, not a single base run. Like, she did a fantastic job. No free bases. I'm excited to see as she gets more innings how that's going to look. But to me, she's going to be a pitcher that you should probably start, kind of check in on as this weekend goes on, because there's going to be a lot to watch in this upcoming weekend, a lot of softball. I think that's my favorite thing about preseason is you just get so many games. It's like I could just sit on my couch and I could rot all day long and just be watching softball. I think that's the best part about it for me, but I am excited to keep an eye on UCF and keep tabs on them. Okay, moving on. State of Oklahoma. They're looking good. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State both had strong outings. Both of them came out with 5-0 records. They're swinging big. They're having lots of power. I think Oklahoma, they had a tight game against Washington. It was touch and go just for a little bit, but I think the tougher that you can play, the tougher of the obstacle that you have to overcome, the tougher preseason challenges that you have, it only prepares you so much more in postseason because the feelings are so similar, especially a game against Washington. That feeling of, okay, this could be a World Series game right now. We're watching this and I'm like, wow, like I'm so excited and I'm anxious. I'm sweating. I'm screaming at the TV. I have all of it. That's what I think of whenever I think of those really tough preseason games that you want to get underneath your belt. So, while I do think it was a tough, tight game, ultimately that's going to make Oklahoma stronger. Not that they don't really need all the help, but that's why they're going to have a big boost later on, is because they face good pitching, they face good hitting. Same thing with Oklahoma State. They went out again. UCLA did not have a great weekend against the Big 12. They probably are not having too much fun with them, but Oklahoma State, they had 7 home runs in 5 games. They just showed off. They had their power, they flexed their muscle, and they were able to get some quality wins out there in Los Angeles. They were able to, they're just showing their prowess. And I think it's cool to see how far that they've come these past few years. And now every day in, day out, they're a part of the conversation. This is a team that is going to be highly, highly a force to be recognized with, a force where they're gonna be more consistent. I'm excited to see that consistency this year because in the last couple years, they start off really hot, then they fade off, and then they get really hot again in postseason. So I'm excited to see them stay consistent. They've been living in this world of, okay, we're an elite team. How can we stay there? How can we continue? And they're just going to continue on through. Last one I want to talk about is Kansas. Head coach Jennifer McFalls. She wanted to start the season with an absolute challenge. She faced Oregon, ranked 20 on Softball America, and Indiana, ranked 24 on the Softball America Top 25 poll as of yesterday. She is ready for this season. I think she was a coach at Texas several years ago, made the transition, is now the head coach at Kansas for the past few years. She knows her stuff. She's a great hitting coach and she knows what it takes to have an elite level team. And I think she's helped that program continue to rise and get better and better. So I'm excited to see what they look like in this upcoming season as they start to get some big games underneath their belt, get that experience again. Talked about that with Oklahoma. Getting those tough preseason games is going to help you so much more in season. It's been there, done that. This doesn't feel like a huge situation anymore. I'm used to this. So Kansas, they have a little bit of an uphill battle. They're ranked 8 in the Big 12 preseason poll, but as they get these games underneath their belt, that may change and fluctuate a little bit. As far as plays of the week, I want to talk about the hitter of the week, Reese Atwood. Again, Texas, they're doing their thing. They're flexing their muscle. They're having the ability to show why it is that they are so good. I mean, this is a sophomore behind the plate who absolutely dominated on the field, in the bat. Like, she had it all. She was able to circle everything up and continue to contribute. Last year she had a great season, but she's coming into this year not even stuttering. She's hitting the ground running. And I think that is so impressive because whenever you have a lot of success as a freshman, that can be a little bit overwhelming. And as you enter into your sophomore year, there's a lot of expectations from yourself, from your teammates, from the world, from the media, from NIL, from social media. There's so many distractions that could be coming out to hit you. So for you to just say, you know what, I just want to come out, I want to be free, I just want to play, that's huge for her. So big kudos to Reese Atwood for being that double-sided threat of the second side of that battery, and then also big time bat in the plate. So then we have pitcher of the week. We have Kelly Maxwell. It was announced Big 12 had Kelly Maxwell as the pitcher of the week. But I also, again, I think Texas, they kind of sweep my kudos for the week. Kelly Maxwell did a great job against Washington. She came in relief. And I think that's, for me, what solidified her as one of those top pitchers of the week. That performance of coming in. She has the experience. So she's played at Oklahoma State. She's had those big games. There's this video on TikTok, this sound. It's like, look at these hands. Do they look like they're shaking to me? No, that's literally Kelly Maxwell. Her hands, they're steady Eddie. They're not shaking. They're not moving. They're still. She is calm, cool, and collected in the circle. And that's what she did against Washington. And that, to me, is what made her so impressive in her outing, is the ability to come in, big time situation, get big for this new team that she's always been facing off against, and be able to perform. And then Tegan Caven, the freshman at Texas, talked her up a little bit, but I think she's somebody who, whenever she comes in and has that composure of a veteran against a team like UCLA, where they have the history behind them. I mean, you walk into their program and you just see accolades, championships, All-Americans, wins, World Series. Like, they are the standard, right? And their fans are loud. They have that 8 clap that just goes on and on and on. If you're a former athlete who's ever played against UCLA, you know what I'm talking about. I've been personally victimized by it. It's loud, it's up in your face, it's intense. And so to get that first start and to have that be your debut, really, you're coming out to the softball world and it's on national television, and to be able to perform just the way that you did, like a vet, I think is so, so impressive. So those are my top 2 pitchers for Big 12 this week. Looking forward to seeing how they perform next week. There's a lot of really, really good matchups that are coming up, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to pivot to just the face of the softball world, right? And how we all know it's looming in the distance. We're enjoying this season, but we know next season the softball world is going to be so mixed up, and there's going to be so much change and so much chaos going on. And like I said, Big 12 kind of starting that, leading the way by adding 3 new teams, but you'll see Texas and Oklahoma soon moving to the SEC, but the Big 12 will bring in some fresh faces, and I think it's going to be great. But for now, how do you manage as a team to be able to, okay, I know this is right here, but I don't want to pay attention to that. I want to be focused. I want to be where my feet are. I think I've had the opportunity to call a couple games for Flow Softball, get some really good calls against some preseason games. And a lot of the coaches that I've interviewed, they have been trying to emphasize a lot of being where their feet are. And then afterwards, they're like, yeah, it's really, really hard. And raising my hand as personal testament, it's really, really hard to be where your feet are and to not feel like you're constantly here, then I'm looking at this and I'm looking at that, and I'm staying in my tunnel vision and not letting anything else distract, as an individual and as a team, because as a team, you can't control the action to those around you. So I think as Big 12 starts to get rolling and these teams are playing against all the rest of the country and they're trying to get settled and get ready for conference play, and because they know for conference there's going to be a lot of ranked teams this year in the Big 12, so you have to bring your best. But again, going back to being where your feet are, coming up, there's a lot of ranked matchups that are going on in the conference, or maybe not ranked matchups, but matchups between teams that are gonna be ranked in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Later on down the road, they're gonna get really solid wins. They're gonna be great for the RPI. How do you stay where your feet are? How do you stay centered? And I think for the teams that are a little bit more veteran, I think of Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. I'll even add in a little bit of UCF because they've had some success in the past few years. A little bit. I want to touch on them a little bit more, but I'll say those four. They know what it feels like, that postseason kind of feeling, and they know, okay, I have to stay locked in, and they have their practices, they have their teammates who are able to keep them in. But for the other teams who maybe are not as highly ranked, right, but they're still working, they're trying to get up to that spot, they're trying to get into the top 25, trying to crack the top 10. How do they stay locked in? How do they keep their feet on the ground? And I think the biggest challenge for these teams is going to be not letting the moment get too big for them. Instead of, oh my gosh, you're playing against Oklahoma. Oh my gosh, we're playing against Tennessee. Oh my gosh, we're playing against this top 25 team. It's okay, what is she throwing? What do I need to do? Check in halfway through the game. Is it working? Great, let's keep doing it. Is it not? Okay, if I'm doing X, how do I get to do what I really want to do, Z instead of X? And so working on those in-game adjustments and those self-reflections, I think is that mental side of the game. And so Texas Tech, I saw them last year, their bats were kind of coming around. You saw a little bit more power from them. I think that'll help them if they continue on that path throughout this year. It stays a little bit more consistent. They had the success, celebrated, and then they kind of lost their focus. I think if they're able to maintain that mental approach that they had early on in the season, they're going to be looking really well, not just in preseason, but throughout conference as well. Iowa State, they are always, always, always that scrappy team that you can't ever overlook, right? But you want to be able as a team to not just be that scrappy team, but I think they're good enough that if they decide to embrace, okay, yeah, we are that good team, we are good enough, you'll see them step into that limelight a little bit. And I don't have to be scrappy for the sake of I'm fighting to get a win. I'm scrappy because that's just how I play. And other teams are trying to get the wins against us, but I know I'm good enough. I know my stuff is good enough at the plate, behind the box, whatever it is, to be able to get that win. So I think for these Big 12 teams that are kind of the 6 through 9, 6 through 10, those teams, if they're looking to improve, if I'm them, if I'm the players on the team, if I'm the coaches, I think mindset of how can I challenge myself and then how can I continue to push myself to improve. And obviously, we all talk about it as players, you're growing up as an athlete, as somebody who's competitive. Yeah, I want to get better. But it's getting really, really specific and really accountable with those details and being in the moment where your feet are and saying, did I do it? Did I not? How can I get better? Um, and I think that's what those top teams that we talked about earlier, that's what they do so well, and that's why they're so, so good. But looking at upcoming matchups, we have Oklahoma State. They already had a tough schedule, but they're looking to continue that tough schedule. They're not content with just leaving it be, okay, we had that big win against UCLA, and we're just gonna kinda ride out preseason and leave it at that. They are looking to continue. They play Georgia ranked 4th and LSU ranked 11th by the Softball America poll. And then Northwestern, they're not in the top 25, but they were at the beginning of preseason. We might see them kind of flux in and out of that top 25. So I think that's a really tough schedule for them to play against because whenever you're facing multiple top teams like that, you have to know, okay, I can't just go with this one ace and then work the rest of my staff in. I have to be able to have that complete staff. My hitters, they have to be prepped for not just one really good team, one really good pitcher, but maybe 3, maybe 4 really good pitchers. So I'm excited to see how they do across the board against Georgia and LSU specifically. And then BYU, they also are amping it up a little bit. Another one of those teams that unfortunately is subject to their circumstances. The snow in Utah at this time of year makes me so glad that I live in Texas. I don't have to deal with the snow. It was 40 this morning, and I was shivering and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. It's snowing in Utah. They haven't really been able to get on the field. They haven't been able to have those hard defensive practices. So they've been putting out a ton of reps in the cages, trying to get their reps in on turf fields indoors, but they're going to have a good matchup against Arizona State. Then they're going to face off against Virginia Tech, which Virginia Tech, if you're watching this past week, they had a couple of big games. They looked solid. They looked like a good team. They're ranked 17 on Softball America's top 25. So that's going to be a team that if you could get a win or a really competitive game against, that'll do wonders for BYU and boost up their RPI. Following Texas, Oklahoma State, Texas is following their lead. They're getting that tough schedule with more and more and more. They're going to play number 3 ranked Tennessee, and then number 9 ranked Stanford, and then number 18 ranked Kentucky. But then on top of that, if those 3 weren't enough, they are also going to be playing Northwestern, like I mentioned before, not in the top 25, but they fluctuate up and down. They're a good team. They're a solid team. They have a great coaching staff that knows how to play. And that team is a veteran team that's been to the World Series. They know what it takes to be there. So they have that calm, cool, collected experience of, I know what it takes to be on top. And I think Texas is by far having the hardest preseason schedule as far as who they're facing up against, as far as rankings, trying to get those top wins in, trying to get those top competitions in. So they're piling it on, and I love that. I love that challenge that Mike White is putting forth to his team. Can you handle this? Can you be able to come out and not just deliver on a one-time stage, but be consistent with it? There was an interview that he did, and he was talking, Mike White was talking about, we didn't want to leave tonight looking at the wins and losses, but obviously finishing the day with 2 wins is awesome. He thought the environment was going to be really big for his team, but they got the win. And for him, he was like, that helps with confidence. And as they move forward, whenever you have that kind of confidence and you're playing against Tennessee, Stanford, Kentucky, Northwestern, that's what it's going to be, that continuous, okay, I got that other one, check, a little bit more confidence. Okay, I got that other one, check, a little bit more confidence. And so Texas is looking to build on those wins and build their confidence and their experience up. And then UCF, they are going to be facing against Northwestern and UCLA. Both previously were in the top 25 in the Softball America preseason poll. They're no longer, but again, that veteran experience, that ability to be able to lock in against a team that has the experience of, okay, I've been to the World Series, I've been there, I've done that, I have that experience. Also, I want to point out Northwestern, they just decided that they wanted to play Big 12. I don't know, they just wanted to play Big 12 teams, but they're going to get a really good schedule against these Big 12 matchups as well. And then the last team that I think, if you're going to be trying to watch some Big 12 softball and you're like, what do I watch? This is the last one to round it off, is Texas Tech. They, like I said, they have big bats. They impress and they have power, but they're not always consistent. That's what we saw from them last year. So I'm really looking forward. They're going to be playing Texas State this weekend, and Jessica Mullins is the ace for Texas State. I would expect her to be the arm throwing against Tech. Tech had a great weekend this weekend. They almost got away with a couple of upsets, but they were high scoring games nonetheless. So that tells me their bats are hot. They're seeing pitchers well. They're having the arms. I would like to see Tech maybe minimize a couple of the runs against the other team. So I'm looking forward to seeing, one, how their pitchers respond, but two, will their hitters be able to maintain against really good pitching consistently? So Jessica Mullins, probably going to be the pitcher for Texas State. I'm looking forward to see how Tech do their bats match up. Are they able to adjust quickly? Are they able to stand in and get those big swings against her, because she has a great rise ball, but also great off speed. So how do they handle a mix of speed? Overall, I'm thrilled with the way that the field of Big 12 is starting to look and how it's coming around. I think that whenever you talk about building programs, there's a lot of programs within this that are being built right now. I mentioned Texas Tech and their bats. They've had a couple of coaching changes throughout the years, but they're looking to build. Kansas, Jennifer McFall, she's really doing something special over there. She's looking to grow her team and give them that experience, give them those preseason challenges that they've been working towards for so long of, okay, now I have that confidence like Mike White was talking about. I get that win. I got that confidence now. And I am excited about UCF, that addition. I think they're going to be quickly within the ranks of the top teams. But there's one team that I haven't talked about yet that really impressed, and they had a heartbreaker of a game, and that is Baylor. Baylor this weekend, man, they looked good. And I think the biggest thing with them that I'm excited, maybe not so much in preseason, we won't see them as impressive whenever it comes to being able to have those impressive wins or stat lines, but even then, they give a great showing. Their bats look good, but their pitchers, they had 3 injuries this past fall, and they weren't cleared. They took a while, and they're back and they're cleared now, but 2 of their pitchers, they're coming off of injury. They're being able to, okay, how does my stuff look again? How do I get in softball shape? They're having to play catch up a little bit. And with Baylor having to play catch up, they're not quite in full force, maybe not where they want to be starting this preseason, but man, once they get back in shape, those 2 pitchers, they're going to be absolutely rolling. So I'm excited to see what they look like and what they roll into as season gets going. And then last team I want to talk about a little bit is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 3-time defending national champions. They have what everybody else in the country has been searching for, looking for, trying to replicate, make their own, right? You have a team that has so many returners. And just when you thought, okay, they had a couple of graduates, it's done, it's over. They bring in a couple transfers, they get a couple of freshmen, and boom, just like that, they're right back in it, if not stronger, again for the 4th year in a row. I think going back to that mental side of the game that we were talking about with teams, being able to maintain that level of excellence, being able to maintain that year after year after year, not only extremely hard, it's not easy living in that world, but it's also really draining. So I think a lot to what that team said last year at the end of the World Series, where it was almost like Oklahoma against the world, right? Everybody was rooting for them to lose. They're like, I'm tired of seeing Oklahoma win. I want to see somebody else win. And Oklahoma's over here like, man, I thought we were playing good softball. You don't want us to win. You don't want to see good softball. And sometimes if you listen to it too much, that can really impact and drain you as a player, as a team, as a coach, as a program. And for them, I think the key is to be able to drown all the noise, because surrounding them, there's going to be so much noise. They're used to the teams whenever they play, okay, I'm going to get the very best from whatever team it is that I'm playing. I know that I'm going to get their ace. I know they're going to be coming for our throats. They're used to that. They want that. They love that. They embrace that. But I think for Oklahoma, a big challenge for them this year is going to be, how do I manage that outside noise? Because it's only gotten louder and louder and louder as the years have gone by. But that is my wrap up for the Big 12, all those teams. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I think it's going to be a heck of a year. I'm looking at this weekend's lineups and I'm trying to think, man, if I could only watch one game this weekend, what would it be? And I think for me, the top game that I'm looking forward to, I have to give it a tie. And I would say Oklahoma State against Georgia or Texas versus Stanford. And the reason why I say Stanford is because Kennedy, I want to see how she responds. And she is a competitor. And so her bounce back after a little bit of a down weekend, she's going to want to be at the top of her game. So if Texas is able to beat Kennedy whenever she's in full competitor mode, that's going to be impressive. That to me is saying, man, not only do they know how to hit good pitching, they know how to adjust, they know how to compete against the very best. So that's going to be the 2 games for me that you guys need to watch. I'm looking forward to giving you guys all the news, all the Big 12 detail stats, games, replays, you name it, whatever you guys want. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Nicole_Mendes _, and on Twitter at Nicole_Mendes _, and you'll see that below. But I really am looking forward to talking softball. Somehow or another, I tricked them into giving me this gig so I could talk about it all day long. I'm just a fan of the game, and to be able to come on here and talk about all these talented girls is going to be the highlight of my year. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm again, one more time, I'm Nicole Mendes. I'm the host of the Big 10 or the Big 12, 10 teams, 2 rings softball podcast by Softball America. Let me know whatever you guys want, but until next week, I'll see you then.